Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the seminar series, Transdisciplinarity in Research and Teaching for CIVIS, Europe's Civic University Alliance. I'm co-hosting this session together with Ria Dunkley, who's in Glasgow, and I'm actually sitting in Basel Station en route from Athens to Stockholm, which is quite a journey. And it's so Ria's going to be doing the recording in case we have any technical issues from Basel Station, but the Swiss seem to be quite good at internet, so we should be just fine. It's a real pleasure to welcome Enrique Martin-Santamaria. I've known Enrique for a while. Enrique is the the Innovative Pedagogies Officer for CIVIS and has been guiding us in our pedagogic challenges with teaching in a transdisciplinary manner. Enrique kindly agreed to give a seminar for us today, which I'm very much looking forward to. I'm sure you all are, on complex challenges and collective responses and the importance of a pedagogical framework when we're taking on this type of transdisciplinary challenge. Enrique, it's a warm welcome from me. I'm going to turn my own camera off. I'm going to be in the background, and so is Ria. So we'll jump in if there's any technical issues. Enrique, warm welcome to the Transdisciplinarity Seminar Series.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for being here. I hope it'll be useful and an interesting conversation for all. My name is Enrique Martin-Santamaria. I'm in charge of the strategy of defining the strategy on innovative pedagogies in CIVIS. So I've been working for this alliance for 4 years now. So I've been supporting academics and working together with them, reflecting with them together on some ways of adapting teaching approaches to, let's say, a changing reality, or at least to the very reality of CIVIS, which is kind of particular. And I've learned some things throughout this process, through this time. So this webinar has the main objective of sharing some of those fundings, or at least some of those ideas that I've developed in this time. Particularly, I would like to discuss with you and to talk to you about the importance of a pedagogical framework. So a framework that would guide us when we deliver, where we design, and when we conceive a course, especially in complex situation that I will present later on. But let me start with, let's see if this works. Yeah. Let me start with somehow criticizing my own position, in the sense that the official name of my post is Innovative Pedagogies Officer. Well, it's not a critic what I'll do here, but I understand at least that it can be a confusing term, that it can be tricky to link innovation and education for several reasons. The first one that I understand is that innovation is indeed a relative term. So what is innovative for me could not be for any of you, and definitely what is innovating today, it won't be innovative tomorrow or after tomorrow. So the fact of being innovating doesn't mean a big thing. The second one, and probably more important, is that it's not necessarily the best solution. You as academics know that applying an innovative approach is not necessarily the response for a good response for every context. There are some cases in which probably a very classical approach would better fit the objectives than something new or revolutionary. So it's not in itself better than any other approach. And the third one is that it's uncertain by definition, and especially when it comes to the debate between disciplinary or transdisciplinary approaches, or interdisciplinarity and so on. The big advantage of disciplines is that they have a tradition. So both in researching and in teaching, there's a way of doing things that has been somehow validated by tradition, by the time, because we've been using it, we've been testing it, and we know it works somehow. But when we try to apply something completely new, by definition, we are always facing something unknown. And this is not as ensuring as using something that has been already tested. So I agree on this. There are some things that innovation doesn't solve by itself. But at the same time, I think that we can also agree on some things. Probably the most important one is that we face increasingly global problems that we are not in position to probably define because we don't know them yet. But the very objective of this series of webinars is linked to this, the fact of needing or of developing a master on transdisciplinarity, transdisciplinary issues is linked to the fact, to the intuition that we are facing global problems that have to be addressed collectively. I think that we cannot know for sure where we're going, but we know that things are changing for sure. And especially because of something very simple, and the more connected we are, by this I mean the more connected through in terms of communication, but also in terms of transport, in terms of economic exchanges, politics, and so on, culturally through the social media. The more connected we are, the more global our problems become. So the better we'll be equipped if we discuss with each other to try to solve them. That's the second point. We all know that on a daily basis, in our daily life, we solve better a problem when we are together than when we try to do it each of us on our own. So this would be the second thing I think that we can agree on. And the third one is that if we accept that there are major changes going on from a social, economical, cultural perspective, technological one, the classroom cannot be thought as a bubble completely disconnected from the rest of the world. If we accept that, for example, we use information differently from how we used it before, how we consume it in a different way, we produce it in a different way, we change it in a different way, we cannot expect that the students and ourselves as teachers, we won't be impacted by that. So it's just a way of trying, when we talk about innovation, what I'm trying to do here is to have this reflect of trying to translate what is going on out there and what should be done within the context of a class. I don't have the responses for all. I don't have the response for almost anything of this, but I do think that we need to develop this reflex, this to make this to normalize the idea of trying to read how society is changing, how we are changing the way we live and we live with the others, and try to think how this should or can impact the way the classroom works. So to put it differently, innovation definitely not as a magic formula that can be applied to any context, but almost the opposite. Innovation in the sense of trying to be able to read in order to adapt the way we teach to the particular circumstances of our context, who the students are, what language they speak, what are the cultural background, the academic background, what are the goals we have as teachers. I think that this is something that can look stupid, but I think it's healthy at least to have it in mind when we start designing a course. So, concretely, when we talk about transdisciplinarity, we know that we face very concrete challenges. Some of them are general ones, like the ones I'm putting here. Some others are more practical ones. The ones you're seeing here in the screens, for example, when we aspire to develop a transdisciplinary program or course, we have to admit that we need to work with people with different disciplines by definition. And this is something we are not so used to doing. When let's say that we work with 2-3 academics that we probably don't know in some cases, that comes from different traditions, we need to be, let's say, humble enough to learn from the others, to listen to the others, and to try to find a good common ground, so we can build together something that is useful for students that will come themselves from different academic backgrounds. So this is something important. The second challenge is that universities themselves are not prepared administratively to transdisciplinarity. We, as you all know, for the last 150 years, universities have been organized with organized knowledge into different disciplines that have worked as silos very often. Our administrative structures respond to that way of approaching knowledge. We degrees and masters and so on depends on one of those administrative units, and it's very difficult to make them work together from a very practical perspective. So it's just difficult to decide who does what, for example. That's an additional layer of complexity. The third one that I put here is that we ourselves, because we are sons and daughters of the system, our own academic mentality, approach is very often disciplinary. And we do not adapt easily to the dialogue with other disciplines. It's something that we need to do, we need to learn how to do as well. So we of course, we're delivering some things for students. We need to teach them how to approach from a transdisciplinary perspective an object of study, but we ourselves as teachers have to do this effort of building together something, right? So these are like general reflections on it. But then when it comes, let's see if it works, yeah. When it comes to working concretely on a course, there will be some basic questions. Okay, I want to do something very transdisciplinary. I want to include other approaches. I want to collaborate with academics from different academic perspectives and so on. But I will find myself into having to respond to some of these questions, how to define learning objectives that are both comprehensive, so useful for all of us as academics and students, and at the same time rigorous. We said it before in the beginning, that disciplines have the advantage of tradition. It's also a disadvantage in the sense that it can limit ourselves when trying to do something out of the box. But it's a sort of it ensures a certain rigor. Second, how to facilitate dialogue between academic content and civil society. This is one of the main objectives of a transdisciplinary approach. We can be sure of wanting to do this, but when we start working on something, it's not that easy. How do I find those links? Who do I ask to participate on it? What's my in what phase of the course or the program they will be part of, and so on. How to get students to participate actively, how to evaluate a transdisciplinary course, given that most of the academics have a disciplinary perspective. So there are some very concrete aspects that we will have to face when we try to design or develop a transdisciplinary project. This is why I thought that would be, this is what I've seen in the last years in CIVIS. That's the main conclusion maybe that I can take from my experience, that collaboration doesn't occur naturally. We can all see the advantages, but we need to facilitate it. That's what I meant. That's what I mean when I talk about a pedagogical framework, like a structure, uh, a, something that articulates the course or the program that will facilitate this collaboration. Because if we don't think about this before in a month, we cannot expect that will happen just spontaneously. That's what I think, at least. So, as we said before, with innovative approaches in general and with transdisciplinarity in particular, we don't know for sure how to do it when it comes to teaching. There are some things that we've been testing because it's kind of new, not new in the sense that it's becoming more generalized in the last years, but we don't have enough perspective to have clear and common conclusions. So we're not sure of how to do it, but we know some things about how we learn that I think that can be useful when it comes to developing a project like this. And I want to share some of them with you. When I say that we know how we learn, I mean that we have scientific evidence about how we grasp information, how we collect it, and how we use it. So what things have to be done in order for us to learn from our experience? There are some things that we know that can be useful when developing a transdisciplinary project. The first one that I wanted to share with you is that teaching is, at least also, helping to learn, in the sense that, as we know actually, the fact that I know something, that I tell you something that I know, won't make that you will know it right away. So it's not just like transmitting something that I have, so you have it right away. Teaching is also about creating the conditions so you, as a student, you are able to appropriate the information that I'm sharing with you, and this requires a facilitation of it. So teaching is also about that. As I said in the beginning, of course, there's no magical approach that can be applied to any single context. The key is to, again, it looks stupid, but the key is to be sure about what we want as teachers, what we want them to do, what do we want them to learn in the end. And just do not forget this issue throughout the whole course or program, because it should guide the way we organize our course, the activities we choose, the tools we use, the timeline we will design, and so on. So what do we want them to get from this course or program? The third one is that learning requires an effort to learn. And this is something we know from a scientific perspective as well. I don't mean here that it has to be painful, not at all. Or that, I just mean that we, for the same reason that in the first point of this slide, we said that it's not automatic. We know that, for example, when we see something, we have seen a bill of 10 euros bill thousands of times. and we wouldn't be able to recall, to repeat, to describe what is in it, probably. You would say this is not about learning, it's just about memorizing. That's fine, but it's just an example that shows that the fact of repeating something many times won't make me learn about it. I have to make an effort to understand what's in the object of study. What are the links I can do with my personal experience or with other things that I've already learned? What are the patterns that are inside? What's the logical, the internal logic of the object of study? So I have to make an effort so I can keep it in my mind. I can connect it with other things, with my experience, and I can learn about it in the end. So in this sense, I mean that learning requires an effort. Something very important in my view is that despite the general idea that memory is a data store, a sort of box where we put all the past experience in, actually is our very condition to learn, in the sense that we know as well that we organize memories as networks, that we learn when we activate prior knowledge that is already connected to something that I learn. To put it differently, if I attend to a course on something, on a discipline that I'm completely unfamiliar to, that I know nothing about, I will probably forget it right away when I'll go back home. But if I'm able to find, if I'm kind of familiar to it, and if I'm able to find some links between what is being taught and something that I know, when I will activate this thing that I know, I will probably connect it with the new knowledge. And this is a very simplified scheme, but it's how we know that works, memory. So when we learn something, we connect it with something with prior knowledge, with something that we knew already. And the more things we know, the more we learn for that concrete reason. So we know that the more we learn, the more things we will be able to link to when it comes to get new information. This is something that we have to take into account when we work on inter or transdisciplinary projects, because we have to consider what they know. What are their disciplines, for example? What are their cultural backgrounds as well, in case we have students from different parts of the world? Because it will be something essential to facilitate their knowledge of the things we are teaching. And the last one is that motivation is a learning factor. And this is something that we know as well. Here I use the word utility, and by that word, I don't mean at all productivity. When I say utility, I mean that the student must be able to identify why this will be useful for whatever the reason for he or she. The pleasure of learning can be motivating itself. It's not in all the cases, and that's something that we have to admit to. But anyway, motivation is a learning factor. So we need, when we think of a framework of this structure, we need to think of tools or resources or approaches that will facilitate this motivation among our students. So this is just a list of general ideas that may help. I said before that there's no magic formula when it comes to teaching, but some of these things, maybe not all, but some of them can be useful in different contexts. The first one, I said it before, define and stick to the learning objectives and just don't forget them. So we just don't get lost when we teach. Create the conditions for active learning. We said it, I just said it a second. Ensure continuity between disciplinary modules. When here I'm thinking completely of of a program, a master, for example, that includes modules from different disciplines, we need, or even for the same discipline, we need to, it's useful, let's say, to create the conditions so that the students evoke what has been learned in previous lessons. That's easier when we as teachers are in charge of the whole course than when we share the course or the program with different teachers, because we will have to make sure that the teacher that is in charge of the next module makes any references to what has been learned before. So there's a need of coordination throughout the whole program. So it's useful for the students, which is what is guiding the whole presentation here. This is something that we know as well, that evocation helps learning. And it helps more when there's been a time lapse of 1 week than if it's done right away the next hour. So it's useful to remind what has been learned before. That evaluation is also a learning tool and not just judgment on performance. This is what is usually called formative evaluation, which is just the fact of using evaluations so that the students learn about what they've done during the evaluation. So we need to give them space and time to reflect on it and maybe to rework on it. That's the importance of feedback. Of course, this can be complemented with the classic evaluation that is an administrative need as well, to say, okay, this student has enough understood what is at stake or not. So both things can be done, but it's useful to provide at least some feedback so they reflect on it. Actually, this reflection about the own learning is the basis of this whole presentation. There's this need of, and when I talked before about the effort, it's pretty much the same thing. There's a need of thinking of what we are learning. And this need, this process, this exercise of thinking of what I'm learning implies a sort of effort and is linked to this idea of connecting what I'm learning with some things that I already know. And the next point I put here is that it's been proved that if we design increasingly complex sequences, the student will probably learn better than if they are completely disparate, or if they find something very, very complicated in the beginning that they just cannot connect with, they will probably feel demotivated for the following sessions. And this is again particularly important when it comes to transdisciplinarity, because we have to consider that we have students from very different academic backgrounds, and it's not easy. I really don't have an answer, but it's not easy to find a good like the equilibrium point. So it's useful for students from different backgrounds. And finally, and this is connected to the motivation thing, activities that transcend the classroom, that include external actors, can be useful for learning too, in the sense that they can feel an impact or an interest of what is outside the class. And I'm very aware that this approach fits again better to some cases than in others. There will be cases in which this will just be nonsense, and that's fine. But it's good to have it in mind in case it is useful. And I want to final my presentation with just 4 more slides, but I'll go fast because I want to keep some time so we can discuss about it. With a proposal a pilot, which is the very proof that innovating is an experimentation in itself. We haven't tested this, but we are learning by doing as well. So in CIVIS, as you may know, there's this idea of developing challenge-based education that is in itself, that can be in itself a tricky term as well. But let's say that by challenge-based education here, we understand that the active participation of students in a real-world problem has benefits for their learning. Again, this will fit better with some cases than with others. But let's say that students are confronted with a relevant situation for which a solution is a big word here, let's say an action, a response, resulting in a concrete action is demanded. We have a real case, they have to react to that case using their knowledge, let's say. And something important to say here, even if the object of this presentation is not to develop this framework at all, but learning has to be measured in terms of the competencies that a student has acquired or the knowledge he or she has acquired, and not in terms of the real impact that has on reality. Of course, it is pursued. It would be great if what students do is beneficial in a real life context, but it cannot be the criterion for evaluation of their learning process, because they could learn some things that unfortunately won't be useful for whatever the reason, and this cannot be just the main criteria, at least. So we say that we need a challenge, a real world challenge. I see here two options that are to be tested again. One could be, let's take a global challenge. Let's take climate change. Let's take economic inequalities. Let's take, I don't know, there are many big challenges that concerns us as society. Let's take one of them. The academic team could choose it. There would be challenges with a global dimension and local specificities. And we can imagine, because here we're just imagining, that students from different disciplines work on projects on the same general theme, climate change, to be applied in different local contexts. So a course could be structured considering like common theoretical needs, but then the actions to be developed by these students could be framed locally. So they will have to go somewhere, they will have to understand the particularities of that big problem in a very concrete local context, and they would try to respond to develop a project or something linked to that context. A second possibility would be to create links from the academic perspective with civil society already, people that have a concrete problem in a particular place. They can choose together a challenge. It's a challenge, let's say here, right now I'm in Marseille, we have a problem with pollution with some kind of river or whatever, and we can put students from different disciplines and countries to work together, take advantage of their knowledge and their different interests, and try to give a response to a concrete local problem, which will have, hopefully, beneficials for the learning too. So these are like two possibilities that I find interesting to explore. Just two more things and I'll be done. So when we talked in the beginning to the need to develop the utility of developing a framework, is something related to this, to what you're seeing here. Here, what we try to do is to divide course into three different program into three different phases. Let's say that the first phase, we call it explore, and it'll be aimed at understanding the nature of the challenge, the actors or communities involved, the links with the student reality, and so on. the length will depend on the total length of the format. Then a second phase that could be devoted to deepening to it, to research, to understand the challenge complexity, to conceive a project linked to the challenge, and so on. And here is the moment in which many different disciplines can dialogue to understand, to show the complexity of any challenge in a global context we'll have. And a third one could be more devoted to apply the responses we've developed throughout the whole process. Why CIVIS can be a good place to do this? Because, as you may know, the one condition for the design, the creation of any educational format in CIVIS is that it's co-created by at least 3 different universities. The co-creation is one of the bases of the educational offering. So we already have the co-creation. We need that academics agree on an approach. Potentially, we have students from 17 universities, from 17 different countries, and we have also the possibility, because the structure exists already, to create links with the different civil societies or the different social contexts in each country, in each city, through the Open Labs. The Open Labs are bodies, are teams of people that have been created to ensure this link with the local reality. So we have already that, and we have the possibility to make them work. I mean, this is in CIVIS there are some things that can be complex, as in any other European university, I suppose, or any other innovative project like this. But this is a chance, in the sense that we already have something to build on. We have it. We just can test how it works. We have the basis to do it. So what I'm presenting here, and I insist, and this is just a pilot proposal, could be, for example, to use the so-called BIPs. The BIPs, I'm sorry for the acronyms. The BIP, it's an acronym that corresponds to Blended Intensive Program, which is one of the most popular formats in CIVIS. To put it simple, it's just a course that is divided into 2 different phases. An online part that can be as long as the academics want, and a physical part where the students meet somewhere in one of the 17 CIVIS universities for 5 years to work on something. So we could imagine of adapting this framework that I've just shown you to this format of the BIP. We could imagine a BIP in which there would be a first phase, the one to explore, where we would understand the interdisciplinary character of the challenge. We could focus on the link between the challenge and different control contexts. We could create teams that would be interdisciplinary and international. We could think also online of a second phase that could be devoted to deepen into it through research, lectures, readings, and other activities. We could explore already the impact of this challenge on specific real-world situations through the Open Labs or other, anyway, trying to look for some connections with society. We could use this phase so that students design a response, an action or something, a project. And then we could use the final phase of the BIP, the physical one, to so the students meet, they present, they implement the project. Let's say it's a communication campaign, whatever. They implement it, they present it, to the rest of the group and hopefully to external stakeholders that would be concerned by the challenge. And then the course could finish with a self-reflection of one's own learning throughout the course. So this is the end of the presentation. It's just a way of sharing some brute material, some in-progress material that we are working on in CIVIS. But it's just an attempt of showing how important can be to think of a framework that would meet the main objectives of the course, both from an academic perspective, so the learning objectives, and the functioning one. So if we want them to participate actively or not, if we want the external stakeholders to be part of the group or not, if we want to evaluate it all together or not. So this needs a previous reflection and a sort of skeleton that would articulate the course or the program. So I'll end here. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to discuss with you if you have any questions.